Hi everyone, Aidan here with etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install this BAKFlip MX4 Hard Tonneau cover on our 2023 Ram 2500. Like I mentioned, this is going to be a folding cover. What that means is you've got these 4 rigid aluminum panels that will fold in sections to give us access to our bed or fully extend and cover the bed. With it covered, we've obviously got some improvements to our fuel economy, reducing the wind drag, and with it being a hard cover, it's going to offer the best security because 1, we've got it covered up, out of sight, out of mind, and if someone did decide to try to break through this, it's going to be a lot harder to get through this than it would be for a soft vinyl cover that they could just cut right through. So for me, a hard tonneau cover is definitely the way I would want to go for my own truck. The folding design here isn't always for everyone, but I do kind of like it for some certain applications. If you want just partial bed access, we can pretty easily fold it back into different sections to give that access. That panel doesn't latch, this one does. So if we wanted to leave it partway closed like that, this panel is latched in, or we can open it up another section right here. If we want to leave it like this, there's buckles at the front that can release from the holders right here and attach to the storage spots right here, keeping the cover from unfolding. And again, that will be on both sides. And if we wanted to go a step further from here, there's another one of these cord releases underneath this panel that will fully open up the cover, sitting against these pads and propping against the back of our cab. This will be held in place with the prop rods that secure on the inside of the tonneau cover rails. This hand knob will loosen up, drop over the prop rod, retighten, and keep it from popping back down. You can do that on both sides here for more full bed access. Now, you're probably noticing the downside to this though, and that's the fact that we're now blocking our back window. Like I said, this is not for everyone. But what it does do a great job at is not taking up any sort of bed space. What I like to compare this to a lot of times is a canister style cover. That one's going to be a retractable cover that will store in a canister in your bed. Now, while it's nice that it doesn't block the back window, it will take up bed space. So it's just a matter of what's more important to you. Do you need that full bed space, or are you looking for easy bed access without taking up any of that room in there? The other advantage of a folding cover like this is that it's actually really easy to remove. At the front of the bed, there's 2 hand knobs underneath that if you fully loosen these up, the entire folding section of the cover just lifts up from the bed, leaving only the rails behind. So if you do decide that you need full access to the bed without any obstructions on the back window, then you can get it. Comparing this again to a canister style, those really are not intended to be removed. You can, it's just very involved, and most people I think aren't going to want to deal with that if they do need full bed access. Next to those hand knobs are going to be drain tubes that take all of the water that might collect on the cover out into the outside of the bed. As we go to unfold this, I will point out that the rails are very rigid, so if you let the weight of this cover fall on them, I wouldn't be too concerned about the structural integrity of it. As soon as you clamp them on in the install, you definitely feel how strong and sturdy it is. So it's nice to know that the cover is rugged enough to handle daily use, and you don't have to treat it like it's going to be fragile or need to be treating it gently. Speaking of that strength, whenever the cover is folded out, it can support up to 400 pounds evenly dispersed throughout the top. Now, where that comes into play is maybe if you've got a heavy toolbox or something that you need to set on top while you go and open the tailgate, then you can set it on top of the cover. You don't have to put it on the ground, and you can trust that while it's closed here, the cover can support that weight, and we can get our hands free to operate the tailgate. It's pretty low profile, only sitting up about a ½ inch from the bed rails, and all around it's got weather sealing. It's a little hard to see on the front and back, but on the sides you can see this rubber seal sitting over top the rails and keeping any water out of the cover. Like I mentioned before, it is really easy to remove the cover, and it's also easy to install it. So let's walk through that installation process now. Now, if your truck does not have a drop-in bed liner, you're going to want to grab the foam seal that comes in your kit and head up to the bulkhead and lay this across there to create a better weather seal. With this, I'm just going to start on one end, laying it down across the bulkhead and trying to keep it straight going over to the other side. And once we get there, we'll trim off any excess that's left. On a spray-in liner like this, it might not stick down the best just because of that textured surface, but once the tonneau cover is on top of it, that'll help weigh it down and keep it held in place. If you've got a bare bed, I would recommend just spraying it down with some alcohol and cleaning the area beforehand just to ensure that you get good adhesion. And just watch out that backing isn't the best, so if the paper starts to tear, be sure to catch it early so you can correct it as you're going down the seal. With that seal in place, you probably noticed that we already have our driver's side rail in place. These are really easy to get up in there. All you got to do is identify the proper side. The way you can do that is locating this large metal plate with the oval shaped hole. That's going to go towards the front, towards the cab of the vehicle. And then the prop rod arm is going to be on the inside of the bed where we can access it and use it to prop up the tonneau cover. So for us, we know that this is the passenger side, and the side of the rubber seal will sit on top of the bed rail. Whenever I put this up into place, you want to slide it as far forward towards the cab as it'll go, and then close the tailgate. Make sure you've got clearance, and that will help somewhat hold it upright, but it's a good idea to grab a friend for this part while we clamp it down. We're gonna have 3 clamps in total. The side with the nut will be on the outside where we can actually access it, and the teeth on the clamp are gonna grab up onto some teeth on the rail, and then on the inside of the bed rail as well. We'll get these into our positions, no specific spots, just on the front and the rear, about 6 to 9 inches from the front and from the rear. And then the third one will go pretty much just in the middle of them. So push it up into place as high as it'll go. Tighten it by hand, making sure those teeth are grabbing on as best they can. And then repeat that process going down the line. We can fully tighten those clamps up with a 14mm wrench or socket. And as we're doing that, it's a good idea to just push some pressure on the rail into the bed rail to make sure it's sitting level and as flush against the bed rail as it can. And then while we're tightening, just make sure that the clamp doesn't twist and that the teeth don't become unaligned. If they are, chances are you're probably over tightening it at that point. And just repeat that process for the other 2 clamps. As you tighten them, some might fall out just because they're only hand tight right now. Just go back to it and reinstall it. Then with a friend, we can lift the cover into place and set it on the rails towards the cab of the truck, leaving about 6 inches of space. And set it down in place. You should hear a small latch. And if need be, you should be able to shift it side to side to get both ends to drop in. Now, the reason we left a little bit of space up here is because there is one small panel that we want towards the front of our cab right here. So we'll just flip it over, and we want the holes right there to align with the slotted holes on the rails. So in our case, we probably need to shift it back a little bit. We want the seal on the front of the tonneau cover to sit over that foam seal that we installed at the very beginning here. And once that's in place, I'm gonna actually just unfold all the sections here and make sure that each of them latch in place properly, and just verify that it's sitting squarely between the rails and all the sections. And the final piece, you can actually see if it's going to click in properly right there. It's a little snug, so we might want to shift it over to the passenger side a little bit. But overall, I'd say it's fitting in there pretty well. And now, when we're happy with the fit, we can fold everything back up and install our clamps. Before clamping this front piece down, we actually want to install our buckles, which are going to come with the female end of the buckle, a small seal that we can just put on with the adhesive backing, And then we've got 2 inserts that are threaded and 2 Phillips head screws. The inserts will pass through the bottom to the top. I'm just going to hold them in place with my fingers. Once we get them popped in, the buckle will sit over top of that, and then the screws will drop down through the top into those threaded inserts on either end. For the clamps that hold our tonneau cover down in place, this is what the finished product looks like. Once we have it installed and we move up to the front of the cover, it's probably going to be a bit hard to see. I'll assemble the other one real quick so you can kind of see what's going on. So we have a large flat bolt that'll feed down through the top. Before we feed it down through the top, we want it to have one of these rubber washers that fits snugly over it like that to help keep any weather out. Then underneath, it'll be another rubber washer with the large metal washer, a split lock washer, and the hand knob to hold it in place. Now I'm going to disassemble all this, and we can bring just the large flat bolt to the front of the tonneau cover. That will pop down through the cover, pushing through the seal, and on the underside we'll secure it with that combination of hardware we saw before. Now it could help at this point to have a friend pushing down on it from the top so it doesn't pop back up through, but if you can at least get it started on your own, threading in with that hand knob, it'll draw it down a bit more and make it easier to manage. And then since we already verified that the positioning of our cover is square and everything latches like we want it to, we can just fully tighten this down. If we wanted to, we could loosely install it, still verify that everything fits, and then fully tighten it. But this is where you can make your adjustments if need be. The next step here is to take our rubber pads, we have 3 in total, and install them on this part of the tonneau cover, because once we fold it upright, this edge right here will actually sit against the cab of the truck. We're going to put 1 in the center and then 2 on the ends. Taking the backing off and sticking it on using that adhesive side here. You want it about 1 inch away from the edge, or you can set it in a little bit more, but that's about where I'm going to go with it on both sides. We can then pull the release and fold this section up to give us a little more room to work, using the prop rods to hold it in place. If they aren't already installed, you'd want to install them, but ours came already assembled. So we'll just drop that down there, just on one side. Unless we're going to be driving right away, then you do both sides. And you can take your drain tubes. One end will attach to the bottom of the tonneau cover, and then the other end will feed outside of your bed. Luckily, we've got some factory holes where we can do that. The drain tube is pretty far in the back corner, so it might be a little difficult to get on there, but just push that in place on both sides. And then take the other end and feed it outside of your bed. We've got a factory hole right here. If your truck or your bed does not have a factory hole like that, you will probably have to drill your own, but there should be some locations here, straight down from that, or even on the front of the bed right here, where there's maybe a plastic cap that you can drill through really easily. With everything installed, I like to do one final fit check, making sure all the latching points are securing properly and all the weather stripping is laying flat. This panel here doesn't have any latches, but this back panel does. Everything is securing in place, getting a good grip. The tailgate shuts as it should, and I'd say everything is sitting pretty well overall. Some of the edges over time will start to lay down a little bit more evenly with heat. It is pretty cold today, so just sitting out in the sun with it closed will help this all lay down a lot more flat. But that'll do it for our installation of this BAKFlip MX4 on our 2023 Ram 2500. Thanks for watching.